You are listening to the HYDAC podcast. In each episode, we share our knowledge with you in topics related to hydraulics and automation and control, from the basics to the current trends. Stay tuned. Welcome to this episode of HYDAC podcast. I'm your host, William Shaw, and on this episode, where we're discussing brazed plate heat exchangers and their benefits in the hydraulic applications. Today in our studio, have Mr Andrea Cimadoro. Andrea is our National Development Manager for Cooling Systems. Andrea has more than 24 years experience in the aero and thermodynamics industry around the globe. So Andrea, welcome to our studio and thank you for your time today.
Hey William, pleasure to be here.
Well, I can begin by asking you, what is a brazed plate heat exchanger?
Well, it is a part of the cooling system and it's a fluid-to-fluid heat exchanger. So the word heat exchanger give exactly the meaning. So this product, this component, exchange heat from a hot source to a cold source, and eventually it will go into an equilibrium of the two fluids.
So last episode that you were in our studio, we discussed air blast coolers. Why would we choose a brazed plate heat exchanger over an air blast cooler?
Well, definitely the brazed plate heat exchanger are more efficient. But the downside is that you need to have a cold fluid. So especially in Australia, this cold fluid sometimes is not available. But when it's available, the brazed plate heat exchanger is the most efficient cooler that we can provide.
So just talking about heat exchangers and coolers, why is this one called a heat exchanger and an air blast cooler called a cooler?
Well, because as I say, you know, the heat exchanger exchange heat and the heat exchangers also can be used if you want to heat up something. So whether the cooler, a normal standard air blast cooler, goes very well in one direction in cooling down with air a fluid, but when you try to do the opposite way, you lose a lot. You can lose up to 50, 60, 70% efficiency. So that's the difference between the two types.
So you've discussed that the brazed plate heat exchanger is more efficient. Are there any drawbacks of this type of heat exchanger in terms of like size or footprint?
I would say the drawback it's only of the quality of the fluid that you inject for cooling, so the cold side. Because, you know, that's why we always ask water quality test certificate, because, you know, inside the fin you can with time you can get clog, you can get blockage due to the quality of the water. I would say that's the only downside, because all the other things when it comes to size, efficiency, it's unbeatable. It's definitely unbeatable.
So is water the only type of cooling medium that's used in brazed plate heat exchangers? Are there other possible types of fluids?
Yeah, we use a lot of other fluids. Sometimes we can also we have done project where we heat up nitrogen with that, or we heat up an air. So as I say, you can use, because it's an heat exchanger, you can use for cooling but also for heating. So we always request the fluid, the type of fluid. We got in the cooling team a chemical engineer, so that goes through all this specification, and we provide the customer the best solution, the best combination.
Is there a chance that either of these fluids mix, and can this be prevented if there is a chance of these mixing and it wouldn't be ideal for these to mix? Can we prevent this from occurring?
Yeah, we definitely can. Since a couple of years, HYDAC have developed the DW series, which means double wall series. The double wall is a gap in between the two fluid, and in case of one potential mix or a pitting or let's say a little hole in one of the plate, it goes into this chamber, which is a neutral chamber between the two fluid, and it will be exhaust sideways from the product. So it's definitely impossible that the two fluid get mixed with this double wall series.
Just coming back to the fluid that's used to cool down the oil in the hydraulic application, what happens to this once it leaves the heat exchanger after it's been heated up? Would you have to then cool this fluid down as well?
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting question, William. It depends on application to application. It depends on fluid to fluid. Sometimes, if we are cooling with tap water, with council water, and the council or the mine or the location is happy to get this water back wherever at 2 or 3 degrees more, that's not a problem. But for example, in building, in construction, in other sector, you need to specify to your customer what's the delta in temperature, the new temperature of the cold fluid that is going to treat. So it's definitely, a very important parameter during the sizing of the brazed plate heat exchanger. And as I say, in some sector it's not a problem because it goes back to a river, it goes back to a big tank, but in other sector it might be a very important parameter.
You've briefly mentioned the delta T there of the heat exchanger. I'd assume that would be one of the considerations of sizing up one of these heat exchangers. Are there any other considerations or rule of thumbs that would need to follow before you consider sizing these up?
Yeah, well, one rule of thumb that HYDAC has developed is that we know that the optimal efficiency point or peak point of a brazed plate heat exchanger is when the cold fluid is 1:1 or 2:1 in between this range of the hot fluid. That's when they do their best. That's where you are using the product on the biggest peak of efficiency. But the flow on the cold side, it's relevant for the temperature of the delta T, of the in and out of the cold side, that you are going to get it. So of course, the higher the flow, the less degree you give into the fluid, the less speed of the flow, the more you're going to exchange it and heat up the cold fluid.
So if I was wanting to install a brazed plate heat exchanger for my hydraulic application because I had a fluid that could be used to cool down my hydraulic oil, what would be the lead time, or where do I go to get more information about some of these brazed plate heat exchangers?
Well, we definitely have a lot of stock in Australia, in the country. So first point of contact is HYDAC, any HYDAC branch in the country. Then our service partner, they might have it in stock as well. And last but not least, our webpage. You can purchase directly a brazed plate heat exchanger on our webpage. You see if it's available, and we can ship it daily. When we don't have stock, we don't have a long lead time. We have very short lead time. We're talking about 2 or 3 week production overseas plus shipping. So it's not an item that is very heavy or very critical to ship, except the big ones. But we have a quite good turnaround, I would say.
So bringing it back to the Australian market, what are some of our competitors doing, and what is HYDAC bringing to the table in terms of benefits over these other companies?
Well, it's definitely a market that was historically dominated by Alfa Laval, and we have them present in Australia. We also have recently Sondex seen some activity on this product. Well, we are not scared of them, definitely not. We're happy to take any challenge. The biggest differentiation point for HYDAC is that we sell the component, but we use often the brazed plate heat exchanger in a full system, where HYDAC designed a full system with pump, with filter, with skid, with electrical junction box. So that's mainly the difference between us and those other companies. So they are only, let's say, component provider or subsystem provider, where the HYDAC incorporate the brazed plate heat exchanger in a lot of system that we produce out of Melbourne.
Thank you, Andrea, for coming into our studio today and providing us with your expertise on cooling systems. For everyone else, thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned for our next episode of HYDAC Podcast. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, William, and to the next podcast.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of HYDAC Podcast. For an in-depth learning on the subject you've just listened to, enrol on the technical training at HYDAC Australia. For more information, visit our website hydac.com.au. HYDAC, global presence, local competence.